This episode is sponsored by The Alcohol Experiment, a free 30-day challenge designed to interrupt your patterns, give you control, restore your health, and put you back in touch with the version of you who doesn't need alcohol to cope, relax, or enjoy life. More than 220,000 people have already tried The Alcohol Experiment for themselves and have seen improved sleep, increased happiness, reduced anxiety, and so much more. Join thousands in this inspiring, hopeful, and exciting program where you examine your beliefs and reconnect with the best version of you without ever feeling like you're missing out. Start today for free at alcoholexperiment.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. I'm here with Kathryn. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Annie. I'm really well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for getting up early and doing this at the time difference and everything else. It's awesome. So why don't you start at the beginning with alcohol? Where did this whole journey begin for you?
So my journey with alcohol began like a lot of Australians during my teenage years. So I started drinking when I was about maybe 13 or 14 was the first time I started to experiment with alcohol. I think I stole some spirits from my parents' cabinet with a girlfriend and like sculled a whole lot of the alcohol and felt really unwell, and then continued down the path. I think I didn't initially really like the taste of alcohol, but there was something, I think, that was enticing about the whole idea of kind of losing control and doing something that I wasn't supposed to. And from that point forward, there was always for me, just an attraction towards using alcohol. And I think before I knew it, at the age of 16 or 17, I was regularly binge drinking. And I, as a young girl, I had quite a high tolerance for alcohol compared with some of the other girls that I was friends with. And so I was sort of put a bit on a pedestal by a lot of the males that I was friends with. And they were like, oh, like it's amazing how much you can tolerate. And so I sort of wore that as a bit of a badge of honor. And it became part of my identity, because the other thing was I didn't really drink and get sick. So I could drink a lot, and it wouldn't be until I'd sort of, I guess, pass out or get to the end of the night, but my body didn't sort of start to expel it. So I could last and last and last. And so I started to be given nicknames like the fish and camel and those sorts of things. So it really, by the time I was 18, it was really quite a big part of my identity. I was known as a big drinker, and that I could, keep up with the boys, which in Australian culture was a big thing back then as well. And it still is.
Yeah, for sure. That's so interesting. They're like put you on a pedestal for having the highest tolerance. I felt that in corporate culture for sure. I was like, oh, look at me. Yeah, that's fascinating. All right. So then what happened?
So I guess drinking for me in my teenage years and young adulthood, it was very normalized in Australia to binge drink your weekends away, your Thursday nights when you're at uni. It was what everyone did. So I think for me, it felt normal, but I know that there was a little voice in my head that there was some things that were happening when I was drinking that I guess made me feel a little bit concerned. Things like I would black out. I wouldn't remember parts of nights. I'd get into difficult situations with in relationships, in friendships. I'd say things that I wasn't proud of or that I wouldn't remember. And so there was this bank of building up of, I guess, things where I was going, you know what, my drinking isn't, I think it's causing some issues. But at the time, I didn't really realize it, because when I'd wake up the next morning or talk to friends, we'd all sort of laugh about it and joke about it. And it would be like, oh, well, just another big night, another write-off, doesn't matter. But I do, when I go back to that sort of that version of myself. I do know that she was searching and feeling a little bit like something wasn't quite right. And I guess I took that binge drinking all the way through my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. It was one of those patterns that was really, really hard to break. And I know that when I was trying to get pregnant with my first son, I took some time off drinking. And when I was breastfeeding and pregnant, I didn't drink nearly as much. And, you know, to be honest, I didn't find it hard not to drink. But it was interesting. Once I started drinking again after that time, I fell back into that pattern of binge drinking despite not wanting to. I always would end up back in that really difficult place of not again. Why is this happening? Why can't I control this? Is there something I'm missing? Is there something wrong with me? And all of these questions started building up over the years. And it wasn't, I guess, until I was in my, I'm 49 now, but it wasn't until I was in my, I guess, late 30s, early 40s, that I really started to feel concerned about the fact that this binge drinking pattern was not going anywhere. It was getting worse. I was starting to have worse blackouts. I was starting to feel quite edgy about my kids and what I was role modeling to them. My husband was also a binge drinker as well, and it wasn't creating a great dynamic in our relationship. So what I realized was that, you know, back from when I started binge drinking at 14, there was just this pattern that had continued and continued. And it didn't really matter how much time I took off drinking, I would end up back in that binge drinking pattern, because I thought, well, if I can moderate, if I can take a month off, if I can have alcohol-free days during the week, then I don't have a problem. But what I realized is that I did have a problem. I don't have one now, but it took me a while to get to that point and then take responsibility for my own drinking and what that meant for me in my life.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it is so interesting, that journey from, you know, maybe something's going on here to, all right, I'm pretty sure something's going on here to, yeah, something's going on here and I need to do something about this. And how I love the idea of even backing that journey up to where we start to think about it sooner, but just the dynamic of the conversation has been that it almost pushes us further down the path before, because there's so much historically guilt and shame associated with over drinking, but hopefully we can change that conversation.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think it's if I look back now, it's a really painful place to be in awareness, but not be doing anything about it. So I think for me, I was actually in a world of hurt for a long period of time. It's almost like you're stuck because you haven't taken the steps to actually get yourself out of it, but you are really aware of this pain that you're in. And I look back at how I was existing at that time in my life, and I really feel, a deep sense of compassion for that person who was so hard on herself all the time, who was giving herself, so much, I guess, criticism about all sorts of different things. And I think for me now, that's one of the biggest differences that I notice in my life, that I'm not, now that I'm no longer drinking, is there's so much more space for, self-love and compassion. And I don't have that same critical voice that was like pretty much at me the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So then in your journey, what was next?
So I guess for about 5 or 6 years, I had decided that moderation wasn't working for me, but I was sort of toing and froing quite a lot over that period in time. I was taking a month off, a couple of months off, feeling really good. But then there was something, I was still stuck in the dynamic of I should still be able to drink and I should still be able to have a drink every now and again socially. And so I pretty much what I did for 5 years was I'd take maybe 3 months off drinking a year at different points in time. I wouldn't drink during the week. I'd have all these rules and regulations around my drinking, but it was exhausting. It was so tiring. And of course, I would still end up binging at one point or another. And there were probably 2 events that happened in the lead up to me, really stopping drinking for good. And one was at my brother's wedding, and then one was when we were on a family holiday. And in my brother's wedding, I was a bridesmaid, and it was a beautiful day. He's my younger brother. He's 9 years younger than me. I was really excited to be part of the bridal party. I had been going through some, personal difficulties in my relationship with my husband at the time. We'd had some financial issues, and I went to the wedding and drank a lot very quickly, and was really drunk. And I behaved in a way that was really unkind to my mum. I said some things that were really hurtful. And I just didn't present myself in a way that was respectful or kind. And I really feel like I ruined that night for my mum. And I didn't really remember it very well. I woke up the next morning and I thought, oh, was that a dream? And I'd also, fallen over and hurt my hand and a whole lot of stuff. And then I just started feeling that horrendous shame. I had my 3 small boys that were up the next morning. And I remember just thinking, oh God, not again. This is really bad. I'm going to have to go and speak to my mum and have a conversation with her. And what I used to hate so much was actually not really remembering. So then not being able to take responsibility for even my behavior, knowing that I'd said and done things, but still thinking, well, I can't really connect with that person because that person is like, I don't know what that person was doing at that point in time, and I can't relate to those comments. So that was one of a real turning point. And then probably a couple of years later, I went on a family holiday and we were out for drinks with another family at their place. I shotgunned about 4 cocktails really quickly. And the next thing I remember is waking up in the apartment we were staying at with like a really sore head, like I'd, hit it. And I couldn't remember how I'd got home, what happened. And I remember looking over at my husband and his eyes were like, and I was like, oh, and he's like, can you remember what happened last night? And I was like, oh, no, it feels like something pretty major. Anyway, I got really drunk. They had to bring me home in the car. The kids were in the car. They were really worried about me. I tried to get up the steps to our apartment and I tripped and fell back and hit my head, and the kids were like crying and, oh, what's wrong with mum? And so that was just such a big moment for me. I just thought, oh my gosh. And the kids sat me down and, they were only little, like, I guess 11, 12, 13 or whatever. My oldest was probably just a teenager. And they were like, Mum, we were so worried about you. Why did you do that? Like what? And then I felt so much guilt. And I did a lot of soul searching that holiday. I did a lot of journaling about, why was I drinking? What was going on for me? And there's a beautiful spot where we go on a holiday, and I just sat there and I just said to myself, I actually need to stop drinking. I need to give up, or I just really need to take it out of my life for an indefinite period of time and see what life feels like without drinking. And so I feel like it was probably about 3 or 4 months after that I decided to completely have a big break, which was in July 2019, which was when I also did my first live alcohol experiment with you.
Awesome.
And so it was the perfect combination. I think personally I'd got to a point where I just was open to see what would happen rather than saying, okay, you're starting here and stopping here. And then all the information that was coming through the live alcohol experiment really resonated with me. All the information that I didn't know or hadn't heard before, the community. Suddenly my world opened up and it was like, wow, so many people struggle with their relationship with alcohol. There's nothing wrong with me. I can do this. I can lean into this group. I can find a way to change my life. And that was where it started. It started in that month, that July 2019. I had my last drink on the 30th of June, and I actually drank about a bottle and a half of red wine, and I was watching Australian rules football, and I got emotional. And I remember going to bed that night and just thinking, oh, I can't wait for tomorrow. I really am looking forward to seeing what the future unfolds. And that was the last time I woke up feeling hungover. And little did I know that there was like quite a major chapter to start in my life 2 months later. As we know, like, you just never know what's going to happen. And I feel like my body knew that something big was going to happen in my life. And yeah, I guess then 2 months later, I received a diagnosis of breast cancer. And yeah, I mean, that's been kind of the most traumatic and transformational period in my life, but it's also been incredibly important to have been able to navigate it being alcohol free. I think it's really helped with my healing and my confidence in being able to connect in with all of the emotions that are, I guess, deep within, because alcohol, I think, had numbed a lot of what I was feeling. And so I had to release so much from my past whilst I was going through the diagnosis too. And although it was really challenging, it was really freeing as well, and it's been life-changing. So I think giving up alcohol and then having the breast cancer diagnosis so close together was challenging, but it also supercharged so much healing as well at the same time.
Wow. So how is that? Were you ever tempted to go back to drinking, especially because you're like, oh, this is just hard, I deserve it? I mean, I hear that so often.
Yeah, the thoughts came up. Yes, they did come up. And other people even said, oh, you have to have a drink. I mean, this is like dire straits type of thing. But I think deep inside, I knew that that wasn't going to serve me. And I very quickly started to really focus on what I needed to do to put myself in the best position to heal. And I started doing quite a bit of research into breast cancer, the causes, how you can help yourself through, integrative approaches as well as Western medicine. And, I started to find out that there were lots of links between alcohol consumption and cancer, in particular, the estrogen-driven breast cancer that I was diagnosed with. So part of me very intuitively decided that no, alcohol was not going to serve me at all. And that there was a greater purpose to what was happening for me in choosing to take alcohol out of my life, then having a breast cancer diagnosis. I could see in the future that there was a role to play for me in generating awareness and communicating what was, what this life experience was about. So then I felt really connected in with that. And so alcohol didn't really enter too much into my mind, apart from initially that first conversation. And then I felt like it was very empowering to continue to choose not to. And it still feels very much like that now that, I'm through all my treatment and I'm, I'm in a really good place. The fact that I was a huge binge drinker for 30 years, it feels like taking that risk factor out of my life is a really incredible thing to be able to do, and to also communicate to other people as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. All right. So what happened next?
So what happened next? So I went through, I guess, a year and a half worth of treatment. And so I had 5 months of very intense chemotherapy. I had surgery. I had radiation therapy. I then had some targeted therapy. And that was, again, a really life-changing experience. I was given so much love and support during that time, but it really tapped me into what living was all about. I guess having a diagnosis at the age of 46 was the first time I really, I guess, thought about my own mortality and what legacy I wanted to leave and what life is actually about, and how you can be a passenger or you can be actively involved in your life and choose the way you want to live. So that became this, I felt this driving force inside me all of a sudden that was like, I am so privileged to be living in this life and to get another opportunity to do that after having had a life-threatening diagnosis. So I actually saw it as a real opportunity to choose to live with a lot more purpose and give back and be of service. And that felt to me like, it just felt so like I felt so connected to that in my heart. And so that's when I sort of started thinking about, I'd worked in, PR and communications for many years, and I had taken a leave of absence for my job whilst I was going through some of my treatment, and then COVID hit and I just decided I didn't want to go back to that job. And that's when I had started thinking about coaching, and I think I'd sent an email to This Naked Mind, I think back in after I'd done the alcohol experiment, saying, hey, if you're ever doing any coaching, I'd love to be involved and I'd love to do a coaching certification. And then the timing lined up last year, and that was one of the most incredible decisions I've made as well. I remember at the time thinking that 2 years previously, it would have been really difficult for me to make a decision for the financial investment, the time investment. But for me, it was like, this is it. I'm doing it. This is where I need to be. And of course, I started the certification in March this year and finished in August. And what an incredible community. It's just been so life-changing for me. And now I've started, my own business. I have clients in, America and the UK now, and it's really starting to take off and it feels really amazing.
That's so wonderful. I'm so glad for you. That's just such a powerful story of all of the things. And you have such a sort of light, pleasant energy about you too, just very happy and peaceful. And that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, it really has been amazing. And I think, some parts of this journey haven't been easy, and I'm still navigating, some relationships and friendships that have changed because of the decision to live an alcohol-free life. And I think, I was talking to my kinesiologist a couple of days ago. There's a part of me that still, was a people pleaser, and choosing an alcohol-free life means that some people aren't pleased with that. Like it really makes them feel awkward. And that for me has been something to really step into and own, because I am so connected to my own life and what I'm doing, and I would never choose to go back there. But it has meant that some relationships and even lifestyle choices have completely changed. And even my relationship with my husband, we had to navigate it was a huge change, because I decided to stop drinking, and then I was going through cancer. He had his own relationship with alcohol that he needed to navigate as well, which was problematic. And so I wasn't even sure if our marriage would last the course, because I very quickly realized that I was committing to my own situation. That was my responsibility, and he needed to work out what was right for him, and it wasn't my responsibility to try and push that onto him. And so I had to give him space to work out what that looked like. And remarkably, well, not remarkably, but we had to do a lot of work. We had a lot of counseling. I mean, he decided himself to choose an alcohol-free life a year ago. So that was a year and a bit after I did. And so that's been it's been so incredible for our marriage, our relationship, the way we connect as well, because alcohol was a big part of the way we used to socialize. And yeah, it's almost like you start to learn a whole new way of living together as a couple, even when we've been together for 20 years. So, but I'm really, I'm so proud of him and what he's done to get to where he is as well. And it doesn't always happen in relationships, because it is really hard, I think. And I know even with some of my clients, that's one of the hardest things for them. They find is if their partner or people close to them aren't on that journey, what the decisions that you need to make and how that impacts you. So yeah, it's what we have had to do a lot of hard work to get there, and we continue to do the work, because we're still navigating a lot of different stuff without drinking.
Yeah, it's so true. It's, any change, no matter how positive the change is in a relationship, is intense. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a really good change. Even if, you won the lottery, it would be a very intense change, right? Arguably good, but anything that you do that's so significantly different in a relationship is just so true. How much it changes things. But that's awesome. And then what about friendships? You said there's been some friendships as well that have been difficult to navigate a bit.
Yeah, they really have. And I guess, a couple of them are like really older friendships with people that I've known for a long period of time. And I guess for me, it's been really, it's been tough, because what I've realized is that because I've changed and my lifestyle's changed, it's not them. It's actually in me, and part of me, even the last month, I've had to navigate accepting a new dynamic in a relationship, and that's actually a choice that I've made while grieving what was as well, and feeling that, that's okay to grieve what was, but continue to look ahead. And I think, you coached me on it in our virtual retreat, and it was really helpful for me. It was really powerful to step back and say, it's actually okay to grieve what was and to accept what is new. And even though that feels different and it's not the same, there's still an opportunity to create something meaningful there. And that's what I've been doing the last few weeks with, in particular, a really beautiful old friendship for me, you know, one of my oldest and closest girlfriends. And I saw her on Friday, and after your coaching, it was amazing. Energetically, my thoughts had changed. And so the relationship felt easier. The flow felt easier because my expectations are different. And that's okay. Because the other thing I realized is that I have other relationships in my life now that I am putting, energy into that are giving me that deeper connection, because we're living, I guess, a more aligned lifestyle. And so, a lot of those friendships have come through this Naked Mind and the beautiful coaches that I've met through the program, and even coming into the mastermind, just connecting with all the coaches who've been in there. I mean, they're just so amazingly generous and loving and kind. And I just think that's a testament to you and the energy that you have created and put into the business. It's just really beautiful.
Oh, it's so awesome. It's so true. And one thing that you said I want to touch on is just this idea of not having expectations. So like another way that I like to say that is just being conscious of the rule books we have for other people. And, just questioning, like, what right do we have to have a rule book, and being conscious of other people's rule books for us, and just kind of calling that sort of stuff into the light, because there's so much heartache in relationship when we have a rule book, like, okay, they don't care about me unless they call me this frequently, or unless they drink with me, or we can't connect. Like, I had a friend who, she definitely had, a meaning about, we were not, even though we'd been friends since preschool, we had started drinking together. And so we, a decade of drinking from, from like our 20s on. And when I stopped, she kind of disappeared. And when we finally ended up talking about it, and I was like, well, what happened exactly? And she's like, well, I guess when I'm thinking about it, I had this meaning that if we weren't drinking margaritas, we'd have nothing to talk about. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so fascinating. Like, it was just this unspoken, unconscious meaning that she'd assigned to something. And then we didn't talk for years because I got super busy and she had this meaning. And then once we reconnected, we're like, oh no, this is even better. We're actually having deeper. But I think letting go of those meanings, those expectations that we have for other people, is just such a key to creating really profoundly good relationships.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think I've realized in myself that I had a lot of rules in my own head about my own stuff, my own way of living, my own relationship with alcohol, my relationships with people. So I've had to dissect and really look into that, because those were rules that I was creating for myself, but I also had them around certain relationships and friendships. So being able to step back and kind of look at that and go, wow, you're creating all the stories here. You're creating a situation that actually doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I guess the most freeing thing for me was stepping back and saying, do I think this person loves me? Yes, they do. Do I love them? Yes, I do. That is all. I need to come into this dynamic with love, with compassion, and be open. And when I did that, everything felt different, rather than going in with whatever little stories and rules, as you said, I had going in my head. So I've got this little bit of paper at the moment on my computer that just says, stop the stories, because that is what gets you all tied up in knots. And what I've found out more often than not is none of it is true. It's just your stories. And I think we all do it. And the awareness is great, because you can stop and you can change it around. So when I went into the catch up with my girlfriend with more of that feeling of love, and I hadn't seen her, and I was excited about seeing her. It still felt really warm. It's different. It's not like it used to be, but it was still I really still enjoyed the time that we had together. And so that was all that mattered, what I took from the experience. And I know that she did too. So it almost felt like that was the new beginning of where we are now. And that felt really, really powerful and really good. So thank you so much, because that coaching really helped me get out of what I was stuck in.
Amazing. I'm so glad. That's awesome. So, Kathryn, let me ask you the last two questions. First of all, where can people find out more about you if they're interested in coaching?
Yeah, so my coaching website is the alcoholmindsetcoach.com. And I do specialize in helping binge drinkers. What I found is that binge drinkers have quite a specific mindset and pattern, and it actually doesn't matter how old you are or whether you're male or female, or there is a real there's a whole lot of emotional similarities that come with being a binge drinker. So I've got some specific binge drinking programs that I've developed, and it's really going well. So the alcoholmindsetcoach.com.
Well, that's so amazing. And it's so important because I was not a binge drinker. And so many people come to me and they ask me specifically about binge drinking. I'm like, I can do research on it, but it wasn't my experience, so I love that. I love that so much. And then the final question is really, if you were going to go back in time to yourself of, struggling with different things, those two incidents we discussed, what would you tell her about what life is like now?
Well, I'm a big believer. I never believe in, I always feel like whatever experience we go through, it's really important. And it's part of our path. So I would never change anything that's happened in my life or tell myself, you should do this because, or whatever. What I would tell myself is that you have this amazing path in your life, and continue to trust and believe in yourself and show others love and compassion. That is the most important thing. We never know what's going on in anyone's life. So try to be less judgmental on yourself, and that helps you be less judgmental of other people. Because I'll be 50 next year, and one of the things, I think one of the greatest lessons that we can all learn is to accept ourselves, and then we can accept other people, and then things just really open up. I think connecting with the humanness of who we all are, that's my favorite thing now. Like, just humans are just the best, right? So, and everyone has a beautiful gift to give in this world. And so I always now try and, some relationships are harder to navigate, and sometimes you don't connect with people, but we can all connect. Mm-hmm. And so, I think for me, and also stop the rules. I think I had too many rules on myself when I was growing, all of that. And I'm starting to let them go, which feels so amazing. And be you, really. That's just do you. Yeah. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's such a freeing way to live when you finally stop trying to be what everybody else, or what you think everybody else wants you to be, because they probably don't actually care that much. And I love that.
That's so true. So
humans, true. I love humans too. Like, we're all so fascinating and interesting. And, if you approach it with just like wonder and curiosity instead of expectation and judgment, the whole world opens up.
It really does. The world is just the most amazing place. And humans are like, they're just so beautiful, and there's so much to learn from everyone. Yes. So I always see conversations now with people as an opportunity to learn. And that's even the other thing about coaching and clients. You can sometimes, just through seeing someone, you create these expectations about who they are. And I'm constantly surprised, I just go in now just with curiosity, because I'm really surprised by people. Just what you see is not what you get sometimes at all. It's, there's so many layers to people.
I love that. It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been super, super fun and very inspiring to hear your story. It's just incredible.
Thanks, Annie. I have loved our conversation. I really appreciate the time to tell my story and share with others.
Awesome.
Hey, it's Annie Grace. I want to tell you about the most important book that I never wrote, and I mean that. This is This Naked Life. It's 48 true stories of people finding freedom from alcohol, and it's so inspiring. It's our stories, as you know from this podcast, that truly change us, that revolutionize what we believe is possible for ourselves. So it's This Naked Life. You can find it on Amazon or check it out online. Even download it 100% free at nakedlifestories.com. And every single copy that you buy, all the proceeds are 100% committed to keeping the alcohol experiment forever free for anybody who needs it. So check it out. It's such an inspirational book. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.